Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Steven Brown, and in today's video, guys, this is the second video that I'm getting up on the channel already. The first one, I went in depth on the Maple Leafs' new goalie, Peter Mrazek, looking at a bunch of contextual goalie advanced analytics, but this next move has the potential to be a real steal for the Toronto Maple Leafs. You may not know who Michael Bunting is, but by the end of this video, you definitely will be, and you'll be really excited to get him for 2 years at $950,000. If we're looking at his player card here with Andy and Rono, you can see that this player had a really good 21-game stint with the Arizona Coyotes last season, scoring 10 goals and 13 points and being really effective all over the ice. I understand how it's easy to see the name, see the cap hit, look at those numbers and think, oh, so he excelled in a bottom six role? No. This guy played 21 games for the Arizona Coyotes last season, and he spent the majority of his ice time with Connor Garland, Nick Schmaltz, or Clayton Keller. His player card from JFresh Hockey here, yes, he did play with good teammates, but he also played against other teams as good players and produced really, really good results. Dom at The Athletic did point out that he shot 26% in 21 games, which is a bit of a PDO bender to say the least, but the rest of his results were still good enough to project his numbers over the next couple of seasons as kind of being a top six or at the very least a top nine forward. You know, if we're looking at the Coyotes with him on the ice versus with him off of the ice here, there is a swing at 5-on-5 with his offense, especially on the power play as well, and even defensively. So this is the player that impacted the Coyotes 5-on-5 offense positively, their defense, and their power play. And I understand every conversation about the Leafs starts with their expensive core, and you may be saying to yourself, yeah, they're only signing these value deals because they have to. But I would argue that they should do that regardless, whether they have the cap space or the means to afford big free agents or not. They should always be looking for these type of value deals. You know, Carter Verhaeghe signed a 2-year deal worth $1 million per, and I wonder if Michael Bunting has the potential to be the next Carter Verhaeghe. As you're seeing, he had 36 points in 43 games here, had a larger opportunity with the Florida Panthers, and was able to succeed. Listed at 5'11", 197 pounds, so not a overly small guy, but definitely not a big guy. He's 25 years old, turning 26 in September here, and the opportunity to get this guy at a really low cost, really low risk, high reward type deal, I think is huge by the Toronto Maple Leafs. If we're working with his Armchair GM skeleton that I was using in my first video here, Mrazek is here, and I should note that that's a tandem, but I shouldn't have to point that out, right? They're not paying $3.8 million for a backup goalie. They're going to split the games. So it's $5.45 million for two goalies. And they got $4 million in cap space here. This is with Pierre Engvall placed on waivers in the minors, giving you more cap space to go out there and improve the roster in other areas while still possibly maybe retaining some center depth, a guy that can play on your penalty kill, and it's only costing you $125,000 against the salary cap. If he does get claimed by a result of placing him on waivers, then I guess he's gone. You can sign other guys, right? There were rumors yesterday that they could potentially move on from a guy like Kerfoot, but I don't see that being too likely, especially with the way that the market is going right now. If you're looking at a guy like Mikheyev, that was another name that was possibly rumored. Yes, he does get in hard on the forecheck. Yes, he is a bit of a bigger body that uses his size along the boards. That is something that the Maple Leafs do need, but at $1.645 million, they can probably get a guy just as good for less or better for that same amount of money. And yeah, he does generate a ton of chances, and I said this in my previous video, but if he doesn't improve his puck handling skills, if he doesn't improve his shot, if he's not going to get better in that sense, those scoring opportunities are going to be much like the ones that we saw this past season, not really turning into anything. With Engvall on the team, they got $2.9 million in cap space. With him off of it, they got one more forward spot to fill and just over $4 million to do it. And this is with a 21-man roster. The max roster size is 23, but the Maple Leafs never carried that many players. And having an extra defenseman with the Toronto Marlies being so close on days where a guy like Liljegren isn't going to play, he's just going to be sent down on a paper transaction so that the Leafs can save some cap space. Don't pay too much attention to the line combinations here. That's not necessarily what I'm concentrating on. If you're starting the regular season with Pierre Engvall in the minors, you got $4 million to work with. And at that point, I think that the most pressing need for the Toronto Maple Leafs is to find a new defensive shutdown centerman. I think it was clear from that 7-game series against the Montreal Canadiens, when playing in an offensive role, Alex Kerfoot can provide you with a lot of value, having 5 points in that 7-game series and looking really energized, not necessarily shoehorned into being the shutdown centerman there. I think that he can provide you a defensive value maybe on the wing on that shutdown line, but to be the center on that line, I don't think that that's him. So in my mind, you got to get a defensive centerman that can take Kerfoot out of that role. And if you're leaving him there, you better make sure that you get a top 6 forward who is better and can bring more offense than what Alex Kerfoot can in that top 6 role. Or maybe you do start the regular season with Engvall as your shutdown centerman, and that is the clear point where you need to upgrade the team at the trade deadline moving forward, and you use the remaining cap space to go out there and upgrade your blue line a little bit. But with only $3.8 million and Travis Thurmond is the extra here, Liljegren in the minors at this point, with the way that the defensive market is kind of shaping up, that's not going to get you a whole lot. You know, maybe even if you moved on from a guy like Dermott and then you had Liljegren as the extra defenseman there, you can call him up and send him down on games that he's either playing or not playing to save some cap space. $4.4 million is still not very much money to upgrade the defensive core with the way that prices are going right now. But in terms of free agent forwards that are left, there's not too many names. There are some names that are still here that have reportedly signed deals, guys like Nick Bonino. I'm not really seeing Jaden Schwartz with Seattle. There's maybe a couple of other names here that pretty much already have deals in place. If you're looking at guys who the Leafs can potentially add for in and around that $4 million number, maybe a guy like Thomas Tatar, but then again, playoff success is a point of contention with him. Maybe a guy like Puy Suter, who we talked about a couple of videos ago, and I'll leave that linked above the screen. Maybe a bigger body and a guy like Nick Ritchie, but you may have to shelter him as he's not necessarily the greatest defensively. Nick Foligno is still an option. According to Kevin McGran, the two sides are still talking. I don't know if there's a deal in place for him. Maybe he takes a couple of days to sign that deal. There are still good players here, but players that would make sense for the Toronto Maple Leafs, there's maybe only about a handful. Matthias Janmark, you know, maybe a guy that can bring some grit and some sandpaper. They had some interest in him, I know, last offseason, but his underlying numbers aren't necessarily the greatest. A guy like Eric Howell, I'm not interested in all. His underlying numbers are awful, both offensively and defensively. Corey Perry, another interesting name there, but the Leafs already have a Wayne Simmons type player there, and they're more looking for that top 6, top 9 kind of forward, you know, to produce some offense. So the options are limited, and Kyle Dubas did make note that if they couldn't get much on the open market, if the deals didn't make sense, then they would circle back on the trade front. So maybe with the options in terms of UFAs wearing a bit thin, maybe Kyle Dubas does look to make a trade. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section so far about the Peter Mrazek deal, the Michael Bunting deal. I know with Peter Mrazek, we have to wait until more goalies are signed. I know Antti Raanta signed a 2-year deal at $2 million, which would have been a little bit interesting, but he's also coming off of injury history, not necessarily the greatest of seasons. But we really do need to wait until more goalie contracts are signed in order to properly compare that. I know Anderson got $4.5 million in 2 seasons from the Carolina Hurricanes, and that is just way too rich for me. That's going to be it for this video, guys. Make sure to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, this is just day 1 of free agency, right? It's 1 p.m. when I'm filming this right now. And Dubas did say that if he didn't like the contracts that were kind of being signed on the open market, that he would circle back on the trade front. So is there a free agent remaining that you guys are still really interested in? Or would you rather Kyle Dubas kind of circle back on the trade front? And what are some names that you guys would maybe like the Leafs to acquire of the ones that are available, obviously?